So I've really got to rein in the rambles this time because my next guest and I rambled on for so long that this episode is a lot longer than intended. And that's why I need to wind my neck in. The thing is, this legend had so much incredible information to share and was such a joy to speak to that, I literally could have spoken to him all day, forevermore. So hopefully I've managed to keep most of it in, not lose anything important, and still keep some of the lovely conversation that we also shared in there as well. Now, one thing that I have decided to keep in is there is some really atrocious ableist language shared, and it's shared in the context of my guest being bullied. The reason why I've left it in is because just on the off chance that there is anybody out there who doesn't realise quite how unacceptable this language is, that's the reason why I've left it in there. So I just wanted to give that extra disclaimer. So without further ado, I give you Tumi, who is a multi-award-winning neurodiversity speaker, advocate and researcher committed to prioritising intersectionality in the neurodiversity space and raising awareness of dyspraxia worldwide. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce the Black Dyspraxic. Hi, I'm Laura and I am ADHD AF. Though blatantly obvious, the late discovery, diagnosis and treatment at 38 for severe combined type ADHD in 2022 not only improved, but genuinely saved my life, which I have since dedicated to fighting for change amidst the global ADHD crisis. As the acronym suggests, I swear like a sailor, and each episode will contain sensitive subject matter. So please always read the description before diving in, where you will also find a link to resources for support. These crucial conversations with experts by lived experience are shared to inform, validate, shame, eradicate, and unite the ADHD community, with a fair few laughs along the way. I've been labelled too much all my life, but finally I celebrate my too muchness and use my justice sensitivity to let the world know that ADHD presents differently in each individual. Self-diagnosis is valid and that ADHD is not a trend. ADHD is real. And I want all ADHDers of all genders to know you are not alone. The leopard is the symbol of Aberdeen, Scotland, where this podcast began. It also symbolises bravery, the reclaiming of power, and I'm a total hum. So leopard print has become the uniform of the ADHD AF community, uniting to support each other and push for change, which together we can make happen. We are the leopard print army. Hear us roar. Could you tell me your name, please?
My name is Tumi Sotire.
And your pronouns?
He, him.
Your age?
My age is 31.
And your location?
Newcastle upon Tyne in the northeast of England.
Lovely. I was there the other day. I'm going off piste already.
Yeah,
Occupation.
we'll talk about that. You know me. I'm a health economist.
Yep.
Research, yeah.
And your platform is?
My platform is the Black Dyspraxic.
Wonderful. And for fun, your favourite film?
My favourite film has to probably be The Lion King.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So
I still
good.
need to see it in theatre, but yeah.
I haven't seen it either, and I've been meaning to see it forever. The Lion King or
Home Alone, but just these kind of movies just stand. Yeah, they really blessed my childhood.
Yes.
And I think
magical. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Your favourite animal?
Lion.
Yes. And what city in the world are you most like?
That was a really interesting one, and it got me thinking.
Yeah.
I will probably say Lagos.
Oh, nice.
And I think it's just because it's a city that just represents me. I was born in London, but I'm of Nigerian descent. I love the noise. I love the hustle and bustle. It's very chaotic. Like not a lot of structure, but it's very vibrant, multicultural.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of business that goes on, a lot of entertainment. People are just having a good time, no matter how difficult things are. people are just having a good time. So yeah, to be fair, I haven't been to many cities across the world, but I've been to Lagos a few times. Yeah.
I love that. I really love what you said. No matter how difficult it gets, people are having a good time. I love that.
Yeah, there's a saying that people in Lagos have, and I guess it's across Nigeria. Just take it easy, stress, And this is a country that sometimes that doesn't have 24-hour electricity, That's and when you don't have 24-hour electricity in the heat, sometimes there's no air cons or anything like that.
No.
But people are happy. And then even like it's one of the happiest places on earth. People are always smiling and just calm and peaceful. When I think about my background with mental health and everything in the UK, sometimes we forget that there's so many things in this country that we need to be thankful for.
Oh,
and
gosh,
I think thinking about Lagos, it reminds me of that. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay. I am so grateful to you for coming on, because I've said many times on this podcast that I am self-diagnosed dyspraxic, and I've said it a lot. I only know the bare bones, and actually I just want to know more about it and let the listeners know more about it. So thank you so much for doing that for us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. Not at all.
I know your podcast is one of the big podcasts in the ND community. So I really, really thank you. I know you recently had a tour and everything, and it just looked incredible online. So the fact that I can be part of it is just really, I'm really grateful. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, I'm so grateful. So let's do it. Tell me, please, Tumi, what is dyspraxia?
So dyspraxia, the medical name for dyspraxia is actually DCD, so developmental coordination disorder. And I think I like to look at the origin of the name. So this is difficulty. Praxia means action. So if you think about it, difficulty in action. So dyspraxia is usually characterized with difficulty in coordination. And if you think about coordination, we're thinking about gross motor skills and fine motor skills. So gross motor skills is movement of limbs and bigger movements. So we're talking about difficulty with swimming, running, walking, or posture may be slightly different. But fine motor skills are thinking about handwriting or ability to handle cutlery or ability for personal care. So dyspraxic women may struggle to do makeup, for example, or some people may struggle with DIY, for example. I really do that. My wife does all the IKEA stuff. But in addition to that, we have other things like struggles with it. And I'll say the other things are probably more general to the ND community. So struggles with executive function and organization, struggles with sleeping. Certain people with dyspraxia have issues with socializing or speed of reading, for example, and things like that. So or maybe even just thinking about time, so they might be late to things or handling their map and stuff like that. So I think one of the reasons why you probably self-diagnose as someone that has dyspraxia is that people who are neurodivergent, these conditions or differences really merge and they really, really overlap with each other. I'm actually really passionate that when someone gets screened or diagnosed for one condition, I truly believe that everybody at that point should be diagnosed, or they should explore the range so everyone has a full picture of what's going on. But the issue is most people that do the diagnosis or help out along the pathway probably are just specialized in ADHD or autism. They don't know what to look out for the multi things. So I love the term dyspraxia, but I recognize that the reason why we use DCD is that there's no medical consensus of what dyspraxia actually is. So we have the term developmental coordination disorder. The reason why I don't like the word, even though it's the scientific term, and it's the word used in the literature. I don't like developmental coordination disorder because the developmental implies that it's only for children, and you don't, but you can't grow out of it. You know, adults have dyspraxia. Coordination implies that it's only to do with coordination, and disorder. I know we have ADHD and everything, but disorder like really re-emphasize the medical model that there's something that has to be fixed. And I actually like the fact that there's no medical definition for dyspraxia, because it means that anyone that identifies as being dyspraxic or having dyspraxia can really define it themselves.
Yes.
Because nobody has taken ownership. So, and also, I also say that the Black DCDer doesn't work as well as the Black dyspraxic. So.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't have quite the same ring.
It doesn't ring. But you also have different types of dyspraxia. So you have verbal dyspraxia and other different types. So I know why in the medical field they want to be very specific on what we mean. But I think, so I'm really clear about these definitions. And I think one of the reasons why I do that is because I am a health economist. I have a background in medical science, so I recognize the importance. And I think one of the reasons why there's not a lot of understanding of what dyspraxia is because different people with different hats are using different terms. But if you think about something like ADHD or autism or dyslexia, or even Tourette's, everybody knows what that is.
Yeah.
You know, so when it comes to section,
not anymore. Yeah.
No, but there's
a less definable. Yeah,
there's a consistency in the term. So whether you're looking at a website, a podcast, or even a research paper, or talking to a clinician, there's a consistency in the term.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't have that with dyspraxia.
Yeah, totally. Do you know what? I really liked what you said about, what did you say? So when somebody gets diagnosed with notices that they are neurodivergent or gets a diagnosis, they should start to look at the spectrum of all the different things that could possibly be co-occurring at the same time. And it's funny because for so many of us that discovered ADHD later in life, as we're going along this path, we're discovering what the co-occurring conditions are that we've got alongside. I feel like I'm collecting them at this point.
Exactly, badges. If you're in this space, even as an advocate, it's helpful to educate yourself.
Completely.
In the way I produce content now, I made a very crucial decision to, as much as I can, to stick to dyspraxic content. And that was kind of like, I can't lie, it was also a business decision in the sense that I realized that there's so many people talking about so many different things.
Yes.
But it's the autism. I might as well stick to who I am, what I know, and if you like my USP, and basically make sure that even if I'm the only voice for dyspraxia, make sure that I'm being true to that rather than being lost about making content about autism or making, because that's not really me. And I feel like
I agree. Yeah,
but I do. Well, on that point about other clinicians knowing about all the other neurodivergent conditions, the truth is that our public services are not adequately funded.
Yes,
and we're struggling to get on the people that have ADHD are struggling on the waiting list, struggling. People that autism are struggling. So imagine then demanding all of to have training and understanding of it's complicating the problem, but it's important. And this is why I'm quite political, but this is why our public services need to be adequately funded.
100%.
And because a lot of us were struggling because of that, because the reality, not a lot of us can pay for private services.
Yes.
And the thing is, if you pay for private services, what you have is that people of a higher social class are more likely to be neurodivergent. And that's not the case. But if it's a case where you could only get the diagnosis from a private place and it's quicker, it then becomes you'll find that a lot of rich and wealthier people are becoming neurodivergent and getting the support, while people from a lower socioeconomic class are waiting for services like the NHS the NHS is broken. So it creates an inequality within the minority community, and that's not great.
100%. So it's funny because, well, it's not funny at all, but the other day, what day was it? I think it was Monday. I got a phone call through from the NHS in Norwich, where I used to live, saying that my name had come to the top of the list and it was my time to get assessed for ADHD. Now, I moved to Aberdeen, Scotland, whatever year it was, 2020. Yeah. So I moved here in 2020. And I let my doctor know when I found out that my husband's work gave me access to private healthcare, and ADHD assessment fit into that. So I had the assessment 2 and a bit years ago. And when I found out how easy it was compared to what was going on, how long the waiting lists were, how dangerous it can be, that's what spurred me into action to start doing this podcast. But my understanding was that message had got given. So I didn't think I was on a waiting list anymore. But to find out on Monday, that's how long it would have taken. So it would have been 5 years. It would have been 5 years in total, whereas it actually took me 3 months when I had access to that privilege.
So the fact that you've done the podcast in so much time and you've become an advocate, that's absolutely incredible. Like, for example, and I think the reason why it resonates with me is because I was diagnosed at 4 on NHS and stuff, but when I was 16, my parents paid for me to get private diagnosis so that I knew exactly what was going on. This was right before A-levels, and it prepared me for university. But one of the reasons why I started the Black Dyspraxic is because I was like, hold on. Yeah. A lot of people, even in the Black community, unfortunately, they don't have access to what I went through private. And then I was just like, actually, it's not even just to do with race, it's also to do with geography. Because I'm from the southeast, a lot more people down south are more affluent to afford things like private healthcare and stuff. But what about people in the northeast of England?
Yeah.
Because of where I am. So it's not just the intersectionality of race, there's class, the geography. There's so many things that can dictate your likelihood of getting diagnosis. And we know that, unfortunately, in the UK and across around the world, that diagnosis can sometimes be the key that you need to unlock the further support. And that shouldn't be the case as well.
No, it really shouldn't be. So you've kind of explained common symptoms and behaviours of the condition, but how is it diagnosed? If you could access a dyspraxia diagnosis, what is the process? What happens?
Oh, that's a really good question. I recently did a post on this. So you can go to your GP. Most likely your GP probably hadn't heard of it, but you can explain this to your GP. And what they will do is they would recommend you to a multidisciplinary team. On that team, you'll have people so depending on your age, if you're a younger, you'll probably have a pediatrician, a psychologist of some sort. I think on the post I talked about a clinical psychologist, but I realized that actually an occupational psychologist also can do it as long as they're HCP qualified, so a healthcare professional qualification. You'll probably have an occupational health therapist as well. You could possibly have an educational psychologist and a physiotherapist. The reason why physiotherapist is because it's also to do with, I've talked a lot about movement and, how your brains and muscles coordinate yourself. So depending on where you are in the country, you have a mixed bag of all these people, and they will do an assessment. And other conditions, they will find evidence of the fact that. But to be diagnosed, this coordination, the lack of coordination, has to have an impact on your day-to-day life. But also, because it's to do with coordination, they have to rule out other conditions. So they have to rule out, okay, it's not Parkinson, okay, it's not epilepsy, it's not cerebral palsy, because there's other coordination, there's other disabilities that have an impact of coordination. So they have to rule out all these other conditions as well to ensure that it's not that. And Yeah. So that's why even something like dyspraxia, even though you can self-diagnose and stuff, it's really important to get that professional thing, because you may think it's dyspraxia, but actually it's something else that you...
It could be something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, from my end, because I really didn't know anything about dyspraxia, I really thought that it was... my little knowledge that I had was that it was to do with organization. But I didn't know anything about ADHD either. I knew nothing, right? And it's funny because what I used to say, my joke was always, gravity doesn't work for me. I'm not held down to the earth. I'm unstable. And literally, I would have a fear of walking down hills because I just can't do it. It's like I'm not still, there's no center of gravity. And then what became really apparent for me was that I cannot drive a car. I've had a few attempts, and it's like I knew in my heart that I'm never going to be able to do all of those things at once. Like, even when I get to grips with how the actual mechanics, the machine works, to be able to hold in my mind the speed that I'm meant to be going at, the direction, that I cannot do all of those things at all. And it caused me, a lot of shame and a lot of distress. But when I figured out that that was actually part of this mishmash of potentially dyspraxia and ADHD that I have, it's like, well, it's not my fault, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But even, so you realize actually there's a lot of things that people do that require coordination.
Yeah.
So cycling, for example.
Yes.
Or swimming, for example. Even eating in a manner that is not messy.
Not spilling drinks down myself.
My partner still reminds me, like, you've got food all over your mouth, you know?
Yeah.
Ensuring that your shoelaces are tied correctly. Or the fact that you can tie bins, or driving, for example. Or let's even be real. I know this is an adult podcast. Intimacy.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
Ability to kiss, or, remember that saliva is not everywhere, or having sex. Do you understand? All these things require coordination, and or dancing, for example, a lot of, and I think this probably resonates with me as well. Like, a lot of people, especially in the Black community, they were like, "Why do you dance like that?" Like, you're like, my friends used to look at me and be like, "Are we listening to the same song? Because you're completely off rhythm."
Sorry, that's mean to laugh, but you've got to laugh. It's funny, like.
Exactly. No, one of the things about being neurodivergent and being dyspraxic, I've learned not to take myself too seriously, because if you laugh, it's comedy. I've been in situations where I have been the center of the joke, and because I don't take myself too seriously, it's made it easier to build friendships and stuff.
Yeah.
However, I would say it's very important that you know the difference between bullying and banter.
Yes, absolutely.
Younger, I would bullied a lot, calling things like spastic Rita. So I should have probably put a trigger warning and stuff. But
that's all right. I will do in the beginning. It's fine.
These things are harmful, and they're affecting my insecurities and confidence. So I've had to call out some people to be like, actually, that's too far. Don't call me that and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't mind the occasional joke and stuff. Another thing that people that dyspraxic struggle with, and I struggle with that, is people will say, "Why are you shouting? I'm over here." So that ability to control speech, the volume of speech.
I have that. I've had to, this is why I've got one headphone on. It's not because I'm a DJ. It's because I know if I have both headphones on, I will just shout at you.
You just shout. And people will just be like, "Why are you shouting?" I mean, or tying shoelaces. The amount of people that be like, "Your shoelaces are untied." And I'm like, I know, I just can't tie them. So because every time I tie them, they get undone on the time. So I just tuck them in, or things like, as a guy doing cufflinks or doing a tie up and all of this stuff. There's if you break it down, there's so many things that, or even, okay, your handwriting is a mess. So people are like, "Oh, you can touch type. And it's like, no, because hello, that requires coordination and stuff
Yes,
like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
you know. Obviously certain things are getting better, so we got um um voice to speech software and stuff like that. But these are, you know, basic things that people do that it just takes for granted, you know. But one thing I would say, even playing sport as well, but one thing I have learned, and one thing I always say to people, is that practice doesn't necessarily have to make perfect, but it can cause improvement.
yeah.
And so my even my mom would say, if you don't want Tumi to do something, tell him he can't do it. So
I
I
will
know.
show you.
So right now I can't drive, and
Yep.
I've had lessons and I can't drive. But instead of saying I will never drive, I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it eventually. Like I can do it. So I have this kind of like innate kind of like, okay, maybe I can't do it, but if I need to, I will do it. I will do it.
Yeah.
You know? And that mentality is helpful sometimes, but sometimes you have to know how to pick your battles. What do
Yeah.
you want to spend time focusing on? But you know, it's going to take a lot of mental energy. It's going to take a lot of stress. But I know that, okay, so for example, tomorrow I'm playing in the football team, in a church football team, regularly, and it's an 11-a-side. I'm not the best person on the pitch. Well, the odds are when someone's going to pass me the ball tomorrow, I'm probably going to miss it 50% of the time. But do I enjoy playing football? Do I enjoy kick about? Yes. So you're still going to find me on the pitch, you know? And it's not allowing your neurodivergent to limit you or to define who you are, you know? But yeah, just to keep on going.
I love that. You know, I really liked what you said. Practice isn't necessarily going to make perfect. And I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast have a lot of perfectionism going on. It's that happens a lot. And actually, like you said, you pick your battles, but also accept if you like doing something, who fucking cares if you're not that good at it? Exactly. Who cares if you've danced like, you know, you're listening to a different song, you like the song, you want to dance, that's it. That's what you want to do.
Just do what you need to do. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the thing that you said about sports, because that was another one of the things that was like tick, tick, tick when I started actually looking at dyspraxia. It said often people with children with dyspraxia will be opting out of team sports at school, opting out. And I was like, oh my God, I used to write the notes all the time from my mum's handwriting, just like, I can't do it, I can't, because I just was so embarrassed that if somebody threw me the ball, I'd miss it, I'd trip over my feet if I ran, like I just went, oh, I'm not going to do this. Yeah.
Well, it's really, really, you're not the only dyspraxic that has told me that. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I really like sport. And even though I wasn't the best at it, I still played. Yeah. And I think maybe it's because my dad, who was just really great, was like, actually, you know, because we were a Manchester United fan. And he said, think about all the players. Well, think about it. There's only one Alex Ferguson. In the sense that with sport, it's not just people on the pitch, but there's coaches, there's tacticians, there's different things. And when it came to sport, especially things like football, what got me interested was the tactics and stuff that I may not be the best coordinated person, but I knew how to run into space. I knew how to do things off the ball. Do you understand? And also, I think maybe it's because being a guy and even being a black, sport is a big thing. And I was just like, I would rather be involved. And even if I'm not the great, it's like I still wanted to be involved. I was predicted like a D in GCSE PE. But I really pushed and I practiced to the point that my family were like, that's so commendable. I ended up putting the D to a B just because of that resilience. And I always tell people that some neurodivergent people are some of the most resilient people that you ever see, because you need to have that tenacity.
We've had to be.
Everything, because the world is stacked against you. Do you understand? And it's a kind of thing where I always say to people that my neurodivergence is not an excuse, it's an explanation. Like, you still
Yes.
have to be disciplined. You still have to be determined. You still have to make sure that you are not comparing yourself to anyone else, but being the best version of yourself. You understand?
Yeah. Yeah,
Those
I
principles still
absolutely.
apply.
Yeah. For most of the listeners, and myself included, we are only discovering our neurodivergence in adulthood. I know that you were diagnosed with dyspraxia in infancy, but do you know what issues unidentified and unmanaged dyspraxia can cause a person? So if it is left completely unidentified through their life, what do you think the impact is?
Lack of self-esteem. Because
Yeah.
you don't actually know what's going on. You just know that it's different, but you can't put a name on that. And I guess that would cause frustration. That self-esteem piece is a big thing, but also affect on mental health.
Yeah.
Because it will just cause you anxiety. Like, why am I struggling at university, or why am I struggling at work? You know, and the thing is, I think that's the biggest impact. Not able to access things like access to work or disability student allowance, and being so frustrated about, I find writing reports challenging, or I find maths challenging, or I find reading compared to math, and not knowing why, and not having an explanation. I think I think that could be the biggest impact. But
Yeah.
I'm so happy. I feel like this is the best moment in time to be neurodivergent, because it's our time.
Yeah.
And I know I have a friend, Lucy, who hopes that her company is called The Future is ND, and I completely agree with that. But not only that, there's so much content out there now.
Yeah.
You know, all you have to do is go to your favorite social media and just type in what you think you have, and then, and something's gonna come up. You just have to hashtag ADHD, hashtag dyspraxia. Things will come up, you know. And 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case.
So do you have access to work? Do you have that support?
Yes.
Can you send me some? I'm still on the waiting list.
So one of the things that I always recommend people, and I think, again, this is probably the advantage of being diagnosed earlier, was because being diagnosed at 16, before I got to university, I already had my disability student allowance, and I had diagnosed.
Yeah.
And that was great because I got to uni, got my 2-1 and stuff, but I already had support in my first term, which was great. So when I got into the world of work after my master's, I was already getting the support as well. However, I would say this, especially because I was looking for work at 2017, I was disclosing that interview. Oh, I'm dyspraxic and stuff like that. And everyone was like, what would that mean? What does that look like? And I didn't get the job offers. It took me a while. But until I got to this point where I was like, okay, I'm not going to disclose it. Guess what? In a few weeks, few months, I got offers. I realized that what I need to do is, instead of maybe disclosing it in the interview, get the job offer first and then disclose it once you get the offer. I know it's a bit cheeky, and I know a lot of people say, no, but find the right company for you. You have to disclose it. It might make sense to disclose that in an interview so you know it's the right fit. If it's not the right fit, it's better that you know beforehand. But listen, we live in a capitalistic society. Someone you got to eat, you need to get a job. And I think I kind of had that realization that because of my name, because of the color of my skin and stuff like that, disclosing my neurodivergence too quickly is just going to be an additional barrier. Yeah. But hey, I'm so active on LinkedIn and social media now that even if I don't disclose it, people would know. I always say to people, once you found one dyspraxic, that's exactly what you've done. Yeah. So everybody's different, everybody's unique. I tell people, ChatGPT is your friend. I know there's some issues with AI and stuff, but if that's going to speed my work up, listen, I'm going to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you prioritize intersectionality in the neurodiversity space. Do you want to say more about that? Do you feel like we've covered that enough, or is there more that you want to say?
Yeah, I think you can't talk about intersectionality enough.
Very
and
true.
I think, as you know, it's because these differences for a long time were just about white middle class men.
Yep.
And I think I'm probably cisgendered as well. And it's a kind of thing where we now know that it's a lot different. There's a variety and stuff. And intersectionality is not just about minorities, because white cisgendered men are part of that. That is an intersection, and it's okay. So it's about intersectionality doesn't necessarily just have to be about the minority. I know that the concept on intersectionality was about including minorities, but it's not excluding anyone. And I think sometimes when we talk about it in that lens. I talk about the intersectionality of race, and I like to talk about for my experience, but age is also a big one that doesn't really talk about. Class is a thing that people don't talk about. Geography, in the sense that not just north and south and east divide, but I know that if I was born in my place of heritage, Nigeria, I'm not going to be diagnosed at 4. There's no way.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to neurodivergent students or neurodivergent individuals in places like Nigeria, Ghana. Access to work is not a thing.
No.
You understand what I'm saying? Support. And we complain about the NHS, and too right, complain about the system and stuff. But even here, there is an option to have some things for free. It may take long, but at least there's an option.
Absolutely.
Even places like America and stuff, there's privatized, there's insurance. So geography clearly plays a big part. And so when I talk about intersectionality, it's not just race. But I think one thing I would say is it's messy, it's difficult, it's not easy, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's absolutely key. If we're not doing something from an intersectional lens, there's no point doing it, because intersectionality ensures that nobody gets left behind, and it's okay. And I think it's important. I think one of the big important things is to understand your privilege and to understand where you come from. So I know that even as a Black man, I still have privilege. Number one, being a man, being a cisgendered man, or also the fact that I went to private school from year 1 to year 11, and my parents were able to pay for private diagnosis. It wasn't the best private school, and it's not well known, but the fact that I was able to take advantage of small classes and all these type of things, I probably wouldn't have ended up to go to a top university and then do a master's and now work in health economics research. If certain things are different. And it's okay to admit that without saying I'm not grateful for that experience. And then to recognize that actually it's really important that we think about social mobility and all of that access and support, And I think it's really, really important that people in the neurodivergent space, we encourage to bring other people along and to make this content more accessible. And I think this is why I love the work that neurodivergent activists are doing, because there's becoming a variety. Social media has been a vital tool because this information is accessible. Majority of people are online and stuff. But even without saying that, there's also digital poverty. So not everyone in the UK has access to the internet. So again, that's intersectional again. It's thinking about all of these things. But I think the founder of the person that coined the term intersectionality says, yes, it's messy, yes, it's complicated, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it.
100%. When I was on your website, I saw a word I've not come across before, neurodistinct. What do you mean? But I think I know what you mean, but I'd love you to, because I've not heard it before. Yeah.
I think language is so important.
Very much so.
Right? And neurodistinct just means, it's kind of like neurodivergent, and let's just explain just being different from what people may consider normal or average. So neurodistinct means just being different.
Mm-hmm.
So if something is distinct, that's set apart, it's unlike other people. It's unlike the norm. It's just different. So if something is distinct, that stands out. So when I talk about being neurodistinct, I'm like, yeah, it just stands out and it's a bit.
So what you're saying is, and this is just what I'm taking from it, is like, obviously, like we say, language is powerful. It's also personal. Like, is it that neurodistinct sounds more positive than neurodivergent to you? Is that it?
Yeah, the thing is, for me, I use it interchangeably, but I think there's a more positive, because if you think about something that is distinct, you have the words like distinction, different. Do you understand? Something distinct. If something is distinct, it's standing out for a positive reason rather than something that's negative.
Yeah.
And I think it's powerful. I think it's really important because when we talk about neurodiversity, we think neurodiversity is just for people who are neurodivergent, but actually neurodiversity just means brain difference. It's a subset of biodiversity.
Yeah.
I say this to people that as long as you have a brain, you belong in the conversation. You understand? It's a big term, but neurodivergent or neurodistinct or neurominority are words that denote the fact that actually we're different from the general population.
What would you like the wider world to know about dyspraxia?
This is something that shocked people last week, and I'm going to say this again. I know this is ADHD AF, but research has shown that dyspraxia is actually more prevalent in the population than ADHD and autism.
That is super interesting.
But there's definitely more research. Finding in autism and ADHD, but actually, it's more common.
There's not enough research in any of it, so really.
Exactly. Exactly. No, because it's really important, because I think people in the dyspraxic community think, oh, we're just a minority. And it's like, no. It's not to do with the fact that there's not a lot of us. It's just that there's not a lot of funding and there's not a lot of,
Exactly.
But the thing is, one thing I would like to say is that we're a family, we need to be, and this is why I love the fact that I'm on the podcast right now, because you're showing that actually, if we want to be inclusive and we want to include intersectionality, part of being into the, yes, there's gender and yes, there's race, and well, if we're neurodivergent, we need to be neuro-inclusive as well. To speak about all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
As someone who has dyspraxia, sometimes I struggle with sleep.
Yeah, do you know, Dr. James Brown said in one of the interviews, one of the times I spoke to him on this podcast, he said, it's funny because he hadn't spoken to a single neurodivergent person who didn't have sleep problems. And in a way, it should be one of the first questions. You've either got people that are tired all the time, that are struggling to get up, or you've got people like me. I don't think I've ever slept 5 hours, more than 5 hours in one stint in my life. Like I don't.
Really? Yeah. Right now I'm sleeping a lot and I'm sleeping well, but there have been seasons where I just struggle to sleep.
Yeah.
And 2 or 3 hours would be okay.
Is it because your mind is racing, or what do you think?
There have been some times, but I think, so for example, I avoid coffee. I just don't drink it. Why? Because coffee is just it's a no-go. I drink Coke now and again. My wife doesn't even want me to drink Coke.
Because it makes you agitated, or it makes you,
Yeah, I know. Just to clarify, I mean Coke as in Coca-Cola.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Well, even from a dyspraxic perspective, because we're talking about coordination, even alcohol, you need to be careful with that. Do you understand? Because it's got to exaggerate. Like a lot of people, dyspraxic struggle with coordination without alcohol. So can you imagine?
Yeah.
So you have to understand yourself and understand how your brain interacts with substances. When I'm talking about dyspraxia, talking about it from my perspective.
Your experience of it, yeah.
And my experience,
Yeah.
Only clinicians and researchers that can say, you know what, when I sample 200 Dyspraxics, this is what happened. I can't do that. I can.
But that's what's interesting, isn't it? Because that's why we need both. That's why we need the personal lived experience to inform the medical and vice versa.
Vice versa. And we need to build relationships. But also in the medical, in research now, and I know it's not, hasn't necessarily caught on, there's something called PPI, which means patient-public involvement. And so more and more, especially to get the bigger grants and the bigger funds, researchers have to evidence how they're carrying people with the general public, how the public are informing the research.
Yes.
And that relationship is getting stronger and stronger.
To eradicate the shame of the situations ADHD can get us in, to unite the community and to raise awareness about the condition, I always end on this question. So I'm changing it slightly. What is the most dyspraxic thing you've done this week?
Because dyspraxic sometimes it's regulation of your body and stuff. So there's times where I'm just bursting for a loop. And it's just it's like, where's the toilet? And I know that. And sometimes you can see me just run into a loop because like, if I don't get there, it's going to be a problem. And these are the other things that people don't talk about. But yeah, I've done that this week as well.
I've just thought of something else, and I promise you I'll leave you alone
Continue.
in a minute. The other thing that I was just thinking about when I was looking into it and it started to line up for me was this posture thing. So I have got really bad posture, and I always put that down to the fact that for a girl, I'm quite tall. I'm 5'8", so I'm taller than the average woman. Yeah. And growing up, especially, I thought that it was like I'd got this slouchiness because I was embarrassed about my height, and that's what I was doing. And actually, it wasn't until I went on tour and I saw videos back of myself standing and talking that I was like, Christ, why am I standing like that? And I can actively try. I've noticed if I wear heels, they're uncomfortable, and it reminds me that I need to stand a certain way. It never lasts. I always end up standing the same way. And I'm embarrassed about it, but there's nothing I can do about it, seemingly.
Yeah, people with dyspepsia are more likely to slouch or have poor posture. And that's because sometimes their muscles are floppy. Sometimes their muscles are quite tense. And this is why physiotherapy can help as well. Stretching is also important. Having exercises that would improve your core muscles and just improving stuff. But even, let's talk about exercise. You know how you go to the gym and your form is really important. Making sure that you do things well to make sure, in a certain way, to make sure that you don't hurt or pull a muscle.
Yeah, so they're safe,
Yeah, but as someone that's dyspraxic, actually it's quite hard to do something in form, because to do something in the correct form sometimes requires a lot of coordination.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So I've actually thought about, and if anyone is listening to this podcast, I'd love to collaborate, doing dyspraxic friendly exercise routines.
Yeah.
Because I remember doing Insanity.
I did that.
Yeah, I did that a few weeks ago. Crazy. But how many of them, those exercises just required a lot of coordination?
Yeah, lots.
Like even
and
just
because
stretching.
It's speed as well. It's speed.
Yeah, and it's like, and a lot of people that I was training with were like, you need to do this better. I was like, you need to shut up. I'm trying to do it the best way I can. Like if you know how much I'm trying to do all these things at this time, and I'm tired as well. And and actually, I don't want to be here. Actually, I want to be in bed.
It's so true. It's so true. Oh, I love it. Is there anything that we haven't covered, or anything else that you want to say?
It's really important right now that dyspraxia has a lot more attention, and we talk about it. Even earlier on in the year, the Dyspraxic Foundation, a charity, national charity that's been going on for almost 40 years closed.
Oh no.
And the Dyspraxic Foundation is the equivalent to like the British Dyslexia Association or the ADHD Foundation. It's a big national organization
Yeah.
closed due to financing and other issues. And I'm part of a group of people that have formed the Dyspraxic Collective. And we're trying to, we at the moment, we don't want to say we're forming another charity or anything like that, but just to create a space for dyspraxic individuals, because it's important that we're represented.
Yeah, 100%.
Some people were like, oh, why didn't you just join another charity or another? And it's like, if you join, you're always going to go last, you're always going to be other. So we actually did a campaign and we ran a survey and over 351 people responded. And right now we're going through that data about what the Dyspraxic Foundation mean to you, how is it going to impact you, and what support would you need going forward. And we're using that, going through the analysis. And we're just here to support people that are dyspraxic or people that are self-diagnosed as well, because I think it's really, really important. Because if one neurodivergent condition gets left behind, we all get left behind. It's really important that we fled after that.
100%.
And another thing that I was going to say, I think one of the reasons why I called it the Black Dyspraxic is because in the Black community, sometimes stereotypically, we're known for things that have a lot to do with coordination, especially in the media. Like, so if we think about dancing, rapping, singing, or being an athlete in sport, those are the things that people normally associate with being Black, especially traditionally. And so growing up, I thought maybe I wasn't Black enough, which is obviously an absurd thing. But actually, one of the positive outcomes from that is because the doctors told my parents that I had above average intelligence. So I've always been interested in academia and studying and stuff, because I was like, okay, like, you may be better than me on the football pitch, but if we have a maths test, and so that's always been, I think that's just an example of me always trying to find the positive thing, always trying to keep smiling, always trying to spin things on his head and stuff. And one thing I want to leave encouraging people is that no one can limit you, only yourself. Like, no matter what the label is, what the diagnosis is, if you want to do it, do it. Think about all the opportunities that this podcast is giving you, for example. And so I want to encourage anyone that's listening to that, become an advocate, self-advocate for yourself, advocate for people in the community. Or you don't even have to become an advocate if it's that business that you want to do, or write that book, or start that blog, or take that career change, or start in that business. Don't let your neurodivergence or neurodistinction stop you.
I love it. Thank you so much. I'm trying not to cry. I'm sucking in through the eyeballs. I love your work, Tumi, and I've loved meeting you. And I'm super, super grateful for everything you've shared, because I've learned a lot.
Well, you're doing great work. I can't believe you were just diagnosed a few years ago.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to achieve so much consistency with the podcast and the engagement? Because even though I'm looking at your page, you have 25,000 followers, and it's...
Do you know what it is? Is I'm really, really genuinely very, very lucky to be here. And ADHD, both mine and other people's, put me in a lot of bad situations, and it really impacted my life in really terrible ways. And when I figured out what it was and I saw the problem, I just felt as in the problem of all the other people that are suffering. You pair those two things together. It's like, one, I'm an alien and everything's terrible, and why is my life so terrible and I can't cope with it? And then the other hand is, well, I'm not alone, but it's not all right that all these other people are suffering as well. And you put the two together, and I really feel like I have to make good out of this. There has to be good to come from this. It can't just be all of my suffering, all of those other people suffering. I feel like it has to It has to get better and it has to happen. Something happens for a reason, whatever. There are times where it's really, really tough to keep going, churning out the content, all of the stuff that goes into reaching out to people. But it's never occurred to me to stop. I couldn't stop. At its core, all I want is for people to be able to access support.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it. It's like, obviously, all of us in this kind of sphere, we want change. We want things to be better for people, for future generations. But I also see a lot of people like me that are just on waiting lists that have had, really adverse things happen in their life. It's like, I want them to not be failed again. Like they've been failed enough, Yeah.
But the thing is, what I'm saying is that if it's just strengths and it's just positive, you wouldn't need support.
No, exactly.
If it's just strengths, if it's just strengths and positives, you wouldn't be on the waiting list. No. You understand? You'll just be like, oh, I'm great. I have ADHD, fantastic.
Like
Let's go. But it's not like that.
I see that all the time in the community. I'm like, at the end of the day, none of us got here from having a nice time, did we? Don't you just love the way that I asked the last question and then we ended up carrying on talking even more? And honestly, that's not even the half of it. We talked for about another half an hour and I honestly could talk to that man all day. What an absolute ledge Tumi is. Thank you so much, Tumi. Do go and follow him, the Black Dyspraxic. That man is doing amazing, amazing work. So I've got to be quick. So the most ADHD thing I've done this week is I booked a nail appointment earlier in the week for tomorrow. I paid for it and then completely forgot about it until I nearly double booked myself. Suddenly remembered I was getting my nails done tomorrow morning, I think. Went to find the confirmation, of which there is no record. And of course, I didn't put it in my calendar. So I have no idea what time the appointment is. I know I definitely booked it because the money has come out of my account. So either I deleted the email or I literally am that bad at technology that I cannot even find an email. It is probably the latter. So God knows, apparently I'm getting my nails done tomorrow. We shall see. In Auditory Processing Corner, as many of you know, my husband and I are selling our house and he was talking me through the process because it's slightly different here in Scotland than what we know down south. And when he finished talking, he said, and then after that, we just go to the seal pit. And I'm like, yeah, great. I love seals. Why not? Sounds like a perfect celebration. And to be fair, in my defense, my husband does say some ridiculous things as well, you will know. But yeah, obviously he didn't say a seal pit. He said, then it will go to a sealed bid. Personally, I prefer seal pit. And yeah, like I said, he does say ridiculous things. As you will know, if you listen to the monthly Most ADHD Things episode, the Most ADHD Things of May 24 have been very well received. I have to say it's my favourite one yet. So if you've not listened, go and have a giggle at us raising ADHD awareness in our own ridiculous way. And thank you to everybody who sends those entries in each week on a Saturday so that we can make those monthly episodes and so that you can all connect and support each other. Similarly, if you would like to connect online with other ADHDers, you can join us on Planet ADHD AF, the peer support community. There'll be a link in the blurb of this episode. But you can also connect with local ADHD adults in real life at one of the last 2 Alien Nation live shows. So Alien Nation is literally the most ridiculous thing I've ever done, but I'm also very proud of it because it's been very well received and it's just always so wonderful to see you all, and I'm very grateful to you all for indulging my ridiculousness. So it is where an ADHD seminar meets bingo and we sing karaoke and we just have a bloody brilliant time making local peer support connections and raising ADHD awareness in our own ridiculous way. So if you fancy it, I would absolutely love to see you at Margate Arts Club on Thursday, July 18th, or at Brighton Comedia on Saturday, the 20th of July. So the tickets are available via the link in blurb. Brighton is almost sold out. So if you are hoping to get to that one, which will be the last of those shows, grab your tickets quick because it's about to sell out. I'm very excited about Margate Arts Club, but I realise I'm rambling already. So those 2 shows are ahead of hosting our own tent at Flackstock Festival. Flackstock is a festival in honour of Caroline Flack, raising mental health awareness and money for charity. Now, several charities actually. Now, it is an honour to be raising ADHD awareness there. in ADHD AF Emporium. I'm joined by a whole host of ADHD AF podcast guests, and there'll be music, there'll be dancing, there'll be bingo, of course, there'll be all sorts. But there will also be incredible handmade festival accessories curated by the one and only Steph of All the Discos. So together we've created ADHD AF Emporium to support neurodivergent makers and creative small businesses. If that sounds like something you do and you would like to be on board with our online marketplace and in-person events, there is an application via the link in the blurb of this episode, and you can follow us at ADHD AF Emporium. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please comment on the Q&A on Spotify, hit those stars, write a review, share it far and wide. We really need to get the word out there. Just like Tumi said, we've all got to learn more about neurodiversity as a whole, and just getting any little thing you can do to help spread the word on socials or anywhere else would be very much appreciated. I will wrap it up here and just say I hope to see you in real life at one of the last 2 Alien Nation shows or on Planet ADHD AF. And I am off to figure out when I'm getting my nails done and looking to go and see some seals. Have a lovely time. It's really late. I'm sorry, I gotta go. Bye.